What would you do or say if you didn't feel like you had to be polite, friendly, pleasant, sweet at all times? This is my latest one question survey. What would you do? Well, and I'm here to answer one of the responses that I got on that survey. Hi, I'm Susan Morrow Johnson, AKA MoJo Medium. I am the Destiny Coach, and I work with women who are over 40 and wondering who the heck am I now that the kids are grown, or I've been divorced, or I've rounded out my career, or whatever that transitional kind of time is that makes you get philosophical and go, oh my gosh, what about my dreams? Those are my people. I specialize in working with solopreneurs and solopreneur wannabes. And now we're going to talk about this one question survey, which again is if you didn't feel like you had to be polite all the time, what would you say or do? Past or future? Either one or all of the above. Tell me everything. You can still take this survey for another, I don't know, day or two. I usually do one a week ish. So in the meantime, I want to tell you what one of the respondents said. Let me pull that up real quick so I can read it accurately. I wouldn't say yes to invitations from my family to attend holiday gatherings. I have to tell you, the first thing I thought was that makes me really sad because it happens that most, not all, but most of my family gatherings throughout my life have been wonderful. I've been blessed with a wonderful family. They're not perfect. None of us are perfect. I'm not perfect either. But most of the family gatherings have been wonderful events and that I've looked forward to and enjoyed. So for this person who said, I wouldn't go to the family gatherings, I wouldn't say yes to those invitations, I want to talk a little bit about that and how that fits into your whole grand scheme of life. So I have to assume from your answer that you said you wouldn't say yes because your family gatherings were the opposite of mine, that they were all unpleasant or even violent. And so that's a very sucky thing. And this is a great point for that you're making for all the women out there that we tend to do things for the sake of being polite, even if they are very hurtful or harmful to us. And so I love that you recognize that at this point in your life and that it makes you realize, oh, going forward, or maybe you've already stopped. We're not doing that anymore. I'm not going someplace that's going to be harmful or hurtful to me. And if they hate me, call me a bitch, throw me out of the family, what the hell ever, because your self preservation has to come first. And I think that's one of the big things. And I'm glad that this particular issue came up because one of the things about being polite is that as women having to be polite since we're born, always be nice and say thank you and please and write thank you notes and go to the family gatherings and be nice and let your cousin sit next to you and paw you or whatever is going on there. But this is how we literally get physically hurt. Do you remember a show called, what was it called? Kimmy Schmidt. Was it just called Kimmy Schmidt? And in the first, it was a sitcom, and it's very clever, very satirical about a woman who, along with four other women, was kidnapped and held in an underground bunker for years, many years. And so then they're found and they're released and they come back into the real world. And so it's about that. And yeah, it's funny. Yeah. So in the very first episode or the second one, the women who are released from this place are on Matt Lauer, which I know Matt Lauer's not on the air anymore. It's a while ago. So they're on Matt Lauer and he's asking each of them, how did you get taken and what happened? And he asked one of the women, well, how did you encounter the crazy guy who stole you away? And she said, well, he had something. He had lost his puppy or something like that. And I didn't really think that I should go in his van with him, but I didn't want to be rude. So I went with him. And Matt Lauer interrupts and he goes, I'm always amazed at what women will do to avoid being rude. And it's so true. It's so true. I mean, your answer, mystery lady, is a very clear part of that you subjected yourself to many, presumably numerous family gatherings that were hurtful and harmful to you, and there was no good came of it. And yet you had to, because it was an obligation to your family. You had to have good manners and be polite and go do the thing that you were obligated to do, because this is what we do and this is how we do things. And, for anyone who's ever been, I don't want to get too graphic, but let's just say sexually assaulted. Let's call it that. So anyone who's ever been sexually assaulted, from an unwanted hug or a pat on the butt to the worst, how many of those incidents that have happened in your life did you think later, I should have just told him? I should have said no. I should have pushed him. I should have screamed. I should have reported it. Right? But you didn't, because that wasn't polite. And that may not have been the thought that crossed your mind. Like, I have to be polite. I can't be rude to this man. But we're just so programmed. I mean, it is just so much a part of us. And yes, it has happened to me too. And so if I didn't have to be polite or didn't think I had to be polite, I'd been a lot more reactive over my lifetime. I'd have been a lot more reactive when I was slighted, insulted, made fun of, assaulted, pinched or hugged or, harassed, whatever that might be. And I can look back at everything that ever happened in that description, in that category, and think, yeah, if I'd have just stood up and said, fuck off, then nothing would have happened. And I would have kept my sanity and my self-respect. But, the whole time I was growing up and well into adulthood, there were always these moments when you would, when a man would say, or a guy would say or do something. And if you went, hey, don't do that, or shut up, or that's rude, or, whatever, then he always would go, I'm just kidding. Can't you take a joke? Lighten up. Or I'll tell you something that really and truly happened to me one time. And this is mild, so I feel like I can share it. I was a building manager, and one day I was outside my office. There was kind of a bullpen area, kind of an open area with some cubicles. And my assistant and I were on the floor arranging something. We were, working on something that we didn't have a table big enough to spread it out. And we were down on the floor working on it. And she got up and did something. And this man that we worked with, who was a nice guy, I never had any problem with him. I considered him a friend. I was about 33, young and cute. I was so cute. The tummy tuck was maybe a year old at that point. And this man was probably in his 50s, married. And so I was down on the floor, and he came walking up behind me, coming through the office. And he said, oh, there you are again, always on your knees. Now, what do you think that means? So this time I wasn't completely polite, but I also didn't tell him to fuck off. I said, you wish. And he immediately said, no, wait, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. Did he? I don't know. I have another perfect example. I was swapping Facebook messages with a old friend from high school, not even somebody I dated, just a friend from high school. Hadn't talked to him in, 30 years, whatever it was. And this was a long time ago too. And we just had exchanged some messages talking about what we'd been doing and what our lives were like and how things had turned out, like you do. And I'm very friendly and I'm interested in people. And all of a sudden he goes, hey, why don't you switch to messaging on this email address? My wife never checks that. So here's what happened. I wasn't polite again. Well, I wasn't rude, but I said, hold on there, Romeo. I'm not interested in somebody else's husband, and I don't need to be hidden from your wife. And he came back at me with fury. I didn't say anything. I didn't, you just assumed something. You're just dirty minded, blah, blah, blah. And, then he blocked me. I'm like, okay, what the hell was that? Because what do you think he meant saying, hey, email me here where my wife doesn't see it? Come on. I mean, are we ever going to get to the point where men don't do that? I think the only way we could do it is for us to stop being polite, for us to call them out on, for us to turn down the invitation to the family event, for us to speak up to our husband before he's our ex-husband and say, hey, you never laugh at my jokes, to consider ourselves worthy of love, joy, and abundance, and of being treated well, and not only dating men who always wind up cheating. These were the other two of the other answers that I spoke about on the last one. All right, well, I'm going to wrap that up. Thank you, Ms. Lady, for that. And I'd love to know if you have stopped going to family events, which I assume you have, and what you've done differently since you stopped doing that. Okay. Thanks so much. Until next time, I'm MoJo Medium, and I want you to stay beautiful.